Hello and a warm welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on my 2014 Passat. I'm changing the timing belt on this. The engine in this is the 2 litre TDI CFFB and we're putting a Gates kit on it. Let's get on with it. So you may have noticed that I already took the under tray off and the top cover off as well earlier on in the video, and that's because I've just done a service on this, oil and filter changes. I think the first thing we're going to do is, now that I've exposed all this, is we're going to start draining out the coolant. So that I am going to replace the coolant in this. I mean, you will lose the majority of the coolant anyway when we take out the water pump, so let's do that. So I'm going to empty the coolant and I'm going to use this lower radiator hose here. There's a little metal clip that you just undo with a screwdriver. I think it's best to pull them all the way out, because I think if you pull it so far it will still grab the pipe. Yeah, I might get wet for this. I'll set you up and then you can watch me get wet. Next I'm going to undo this auxiliary belt. It's an awkward size, it's a 16mm on the tensioner here. Just go anti-clockwise with that, and then as you can see that just releases the tension on the belt, enough to get us off the air conditioning there. Hopefully it won't go, yeah, that's going to go too far, so we need to just that further down. There we go, get that off. Just a short belt, goes round the alternator, obviously the harmonic balancer, the air conditioning, and of course the tensioner. Next I'm going to undo the harmonic balancer, I think. So hopefully these will come undone without needing to hold them back. No. Eesh. That proved to be a challenge to get off. Right, timing belt cover next. T27. I'm going to remove this pipe. This is a coolant hose. I think this goes to the EGR, so I'm just going to undo that here. Because it does get in the way of this bolt. If I remember rightly, the last time I done this, I disconnected it. There's another 10mm right up here that you can't see, and barely I can see it. I can just about get a spanner on it though. Just move that clip up, just so as I can hopefully disconnect it. Should come away from there. There we go. Got another one just further up here that you can't see. This is where I need to move the pipe out the way. Undoing that pipe has given me a good access to that one bolt. If I remember rightly, you need to get that out the way anyway, because it gets in the way of you doing the water pump, if I can remember rightly. Right, that bolt's finally out. Hopefully that's everything done at the bottom here for the time being. Yeah, can we get that off of there? Yeah, it seems like it wants to come. No, still something. I think there's something holding it in still at the top, which is fine because we need to take the engine mount off in a little bit, I believe. We may need to support the engine for this. Okay, so let's start on top of the engine bay here. I think the first thing I'm going to do is get this coolant bottle out of the way. Let's just take this connector off. Got a couple of little screws down here. T20s. Right, let's get those pipes undone. That took longer than expected. Let's get this bracket out of the way next. Right, that's our bracket for our DPF differential pressure sensor. So as that's attached to the cam cover, we just undo the clip on that and release that. Like so. Move that right out of the way. This pipe here isn't actually connected to anything, it's actually just to atmospheric, just measuring the difference between the inlet of the DPF and atmospheric pressure, which there shouldn't be a lot of difference between that and out of the exhaust. What did I do with that other screw? There it is. I'll put those back in temporarily. This is the engine mount that we've got to remove in a moment. So let's remove this fuel filter away from here. Is that another 10? Yes. There's another one just down, right down here. You probably can't see that. This is where the first screw come from for the fuel filter. And the other one is just down there where my finger is. Gonna have to put some grease or something on that a bit later, I think. Right, now that allows us to move that out of the way. I think all I'm going to do is just pull it to one side for the time being. Yes, because we ain't going to get very far with that in the way unless if we can get it up here somehow. At this point we're going to need to support the engine underneath, so I'm going to bring my jack over and just support the engine a bit. There we go, just enough to take the weight. Gut feeling says that we need to take this off, but I'm going to leave it for a minute and see how far we get. Let's take this timing belt cover off next. Looks like it's just the two clips on the top here. We should be able to get that lower cover off as well while we're up here. Yep, that was just waiting for that top half to come off before it allows us to take off the bottom half. Okay, so excuse handycam for a minute. As you can see, this is our other half of the engine mount. and I think we can work around that without actually having to take that off by the looks of things, which is good news. Next thing we need to do is we need to time up the engine, get it to top dead centre, and then what I forgot to mention earlier is you're going to need some locking tools, so we'll end up putting those in. So yeah, let me go and grab those. This is my cam belt locking set. Ignore these are valve seals off of Cavalier. I don't know why I've kept them, but like I say, I've got two sets here. One's for this engine, which I believe that's part of it. These, are they the same? They're the same. And we've got our high pressure fuel pump, I believe. Yeah, if not, I'll have to come back to this and see what else is needed. I'm going to need that. So I don't think we're far off in time. So we've got an arrow on the top of the cam shaft there, which is nearly pointing upwards. The high pressure fuel pump doesn't look like there's anything actually on it. That's where we'll have to stick one of the pins through. On the actual crank, you can see that under there, we have a little mark just there, again not far off in time. So I'm going to rotate this engine. This is where that thing, the bottom crank locking tool goes. I'll show you how that goes in a second. But yeah, let's rotate this this crank and get everything timed up. So that's the bottom crank arrow pointing upwards now, and the same with the cam. If this is out of alignment but the crank is in a line, just go around again, because for every turn of the crank this turns one time. So let's see if we can find where this locking thing goes. I think it goes in there if I remember rightly. This might not be the correct thing for it, but we'll see. It's not exactly pointing upwards, so we may need to just turn it over a little bit more. Let's just make sure it's not this one. Yeah, that goes straight in. But it's a loose fit, so it's definitely not that one, but we're not, you could just tell that we're not far off. So the bottom crank is now locked off. I'll show you that in a minute. The cam is now locked off. I need to get a spanner on that. That's an 18mm, just to jiggle it a bit, just to get that in there. So I just move the fuel filter out of the way. That can rest over there somewhere. And just now need to get this fuel pump, high pressure fuel pump locked off. I can remember which hole it goes in. So that's the bottom pulley now lined up. You can see that the mark is just about lining up with the divot in there, and if I insert my locking tool, that locks in there just nicely. There is a little bit of movement on that, but I think this is for bigger crankshafts maybe, so it's like almost like a multi-tool, but that slots right in there nicely. As you, I don't know if you could quite see that. Bring you around, there ain't quite the room to get you in there, but you just see that that's in there nicely. fuel pump locking tool is in place. The only one I'm having slight difficulty with at the minute is the crank. If I just I'll move this out of the way a minute. There you go. You can see the arrow is just about pointing upwards, but it's just that little bit off. So I think we need to just give that a little bit of a twist there. There, just needed a bit of a tweak. Just take the pressure off it a little bit. Right, so they're locked in now. So we can now undo our tensioner here. We also need an Allen key that will fit into that hole there, just so as we can take the spring tension off it. So I've got myself a spanner, and this is an 8mm Allen key. You don't, strictly speaking, need this. That fits in our tensioner there. Don't, strictly speaking, need it for loosening the tension off. Just need it for doing it up, really. What I'm going to do next is undo these 6 bolts here. This is, everything's in line and locked off, so this is to allow the cams to move, or allow these sprockets to move independently of the actual camshaft. The camshaft is locked off with its own mounting point, which would be behind these. These all come in the kit and will be replaced anyway, so we'll get them all loosened up. That's them loosened off. So if I undo now the tensioner, there we go. That should be now the belt loose, which it is. Begin by just simply pulling it off. One belt removed. So I told you wrong there. The high pressure fuel pump actually locates into this little notch just here, and it goes into the side of the engine there. So just a little revision there for you guys. That's how you know that's in time. This will move separately to that if I undo these. You can see that moves separately to that now, and there is actually an arrow on there which you can see better than I can, just there. So in true VW fashion, can't actually get the tensioner out without removing this engine mount, so it looks like I'd have to remove that after all. And of course it's a 16mm. Okay, so it's a new day. I had to stop because I had other commitments that I needed to get on with, and it's absolutely chucking it down with rain, so that's interesting. Let's start getting all of this stuff off now. So fortunately for me, I've got the old bolt. This stud, this is the new one, needs replacing because these are stretch bolts or torque to yield, whatever you want to call them. So the last time I done this, I actually used the new nut and pull it up against the old nut, so you will have that option as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a thread insert or removal tool, stud insert removal tool I mean. These are annoyingly 15mm, I think. That one certainly is. That one seems like it's a different size. Oh no, there we go, it's going on. So I'm just going to put this nut onto there, tighten that up. And hopefully we'll be able to remove this stud. These I don't think were in particularly tight anyway. Oh, this is annoying. Is that a 16mm? Oh, it might be because of that other stud being backed onto it maybe. Let's see if it'll undo anyway. No, it just undoes the thing. Okay. That's fine. We'll just swap them over. There we go, that should be better. Yeah, much better. Let's see if this will undo. Yeah, I think that's got it. It has. Brilliant. We'll use the same method to install the new one. Annoyingly, on the instructions, I can't find what torque this is supposed to be, but everything seems to be around 20 newton meters, so I'm going to put that in as 20 newton meters. It was quite loose anyway, so we'll go for 20. Got another stud to remove down here. So this one has had Loctite on it in the past. This one has not. This one come with the Loctite on it. Although this one hasn't got any Loctite on it either, and it never did have any Loctite. I'm debating whether to actually put Loctite on that or whether just to put it on. I think I'm going to be safe and put some Loctite on. Just a little dribble of that. Next, let's get this water pump out. Just the 3 bolts on the water pump there. Oh, fucking hell. Just to prevent damage to the seal, I'm just going to put some of this silicone spray onto the rubber ring here. I'm going to reuse the old bolts because it didn't come with a new set, so water pump bolts are apparently 15 inch pounds. So I never got a new bolt for this tensioner pulley. I can only assume it doesn't need one. I could have sworn I replaced it the last time though. New nut. Right, let's replace this next. 16mm, of course. Looks like the grease was just starting to leak out of that. Torque setting for this bolt is 50 Newton meters and then a further 90 degrees. If you don't have one of these gauges, you could just simply put a mark on your socket there. That was quite tight. This tensioner nut is 20 degrees plus 45. I'm not going to get my gauge in there, so we're going to have to guess this one. Next up is installing these new bolts. I'll leave them loose for the minute. Right, that's all the new bolts used up. Let's get that over there. I think it's time to get the belt back on. Right, I was just having a bit of a clean up there, but I almost forgot the tensioner. So we get that put in. Instructions say tensioner should go around about here. I'll just put the nut on temporarily. So it's hand tight. There we go. Right, we can start putting the belt on. I think we're about there. So you want these bolts loose, along with the high pressure fuel pump. Locking tools are still in place at the moment. Timing belt's now in place, so these sprockets need to be loose, which they are. High pressure fuel pump, that's tightened up, that's tightened up. That isn't, because we need to tension it. Am I going the right way? I'm going the wrong way. And you want to just bring, see that arrow, you need to bring that into that notch there. Okay, so that's the tensioner in the right place. I'm not going to torque him up just yet. I need to tighten these bolts up and these before we release our locking tools, so let's do that next. First of all, these need to be tightened up to 20 Newton meters. 3. I'm going to do the same for these. Okay, that's them tightened up. We can start removing these locking tools now. All 3 of them removed. Okay, so now we need to rotate the crankshaft twice and make sure all of our lines and everything match up. that's everything timed back up again now. I just had to give that a bit of a wiggle to get that in. High pressure fuel pump. If I can see where the thing is. Yeah, that's gone in as well. So we should be good to go. Just need to tighten these up to a further 45 degrees. Now that that's all back together, I'm just going to give it a quick start, make sure it runs before we button everything else up. Can't run it for long because we've got a couple of sensors unplugged, and obviously we've got there's no coolant in the engine, but it's literally going to be a quick start and then off. Right, so a few more hours have passed now. We've just you would have seen me just test run this engine. I ran it just for a few seconds to make sure it was all okay, and it is. Let's get this back together. Hopefully this won't take me too long. Now it says you're supposed to use new bolts for this, for the cam belt cover bolts, but that's a bit excessive in my opinion. But they are done up to 10 newton meters of torque. So to get this top engine mount in, you've got access to one of your bolts just here. The other one is just under here, and to get to that you have to take some of this wheel arch liner out, and underneath it there you can see it gives you an access hole. So that's how you can gain access to it. Full disclosure, you're supposed to replace these bolts, and I don't have them, so I'm reusing them, which is not really the right thing to do, but sometimes you just got to go with the flow and replace them at a later date. Okay, engine mount bolts are 40 newton meters of torque plus 180 degrees further as an angle. So now we need to do 180 degrees, which is exactly half a turn. So I'm going to put a little mark on my socket there. So that's going to need to come to about here. So I've just got this wobble bit on there, just to hopefully make it easier. That's the general idea anyway. I'm going to dare go any further than that. It seems like it's too much. think that's everything done at the top here now, with the exception of filling up with coolant. I'm going to go and finish up underneath now. Right, I think we're finally ready to fill her up with coolant and make sure there's no leaks. That's the car now back on all four wheels. I'll just top up the coolant once more because it has dropped a bit now that the thermostat has opened, and then I'm going to go for a test drive. But that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video.